All right, welcome back to Is It Dead Yet? This is Randy and John, and we're here joined with Jason, John's brohouse. He's going to kind of tell you about his Twitch channel for a second. Go ahead.
Awesome. Hello, I'm Jason, avid gamer, big Nintendo fan, and if you want to check out more of my stuff, here's my Twitter, and then I stream sometimes at my account, twitch.tv/Yasone, except I kind of had bad internet, so I tend to stream on my friend Matt's channel, which is twitch.tv/ProudWordDropper. So, come check me out. We play a lot of games like Dead by Daylight, Apex Legends, Overwatch, and things like that.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
No, yeah, thanks for talking some Zelda with us, seeing as you and me talk about Zelda all the time, so might as well get it on camera, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, definitely go check him out and let him know where you found us and be like, we freaking love Is It Dead Yet? We worship them. No, we're not worthy. We're not worthy. But yeah, anyways, so yeah, this is our little podcast thing, and we decided to do a little Zelda one, and because of the 35th anniversary, which I've just realized that I'm turning 35 this year too. But the Legend of Zelda came out in February 21st, 86. And so it was a little bit before my time, but like by 8 months. So
you were
I was in the womb.
Yeah,
I wasn't being conceived yet, but or it was after. It
was after the
anyways,
fact.
So that's pretty gross. Anyways, however we want to start, I guess with Skyward Sword HD.
Yeah. So with the big anticlimactic announcement they had for the Zelda 35th. For most people was the release of the new Skyward Sword HD Remaster. To where it was kind of anticlimactic. Like, it could have been bigger. Everyone wanted Breath of the Wild 2, or even Ocarina and Majora's Mask for the Switch. But we're getting Skyward Sword, which is cool for me because I didn't actually finish Skyward Sword. So it's a really cool opportunity for me to go back, especially because even though I can hook up you can't see it right now, but the Wii and play it with modern TVs and technology, it's rough to kind of go back to Wii games. Like I was playing Ocarina of Time last year a little bit to get some footage on my Wii, and it looks rough on a 4K TV.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's brutal. I remember playing it on like I was saying before on those giant Projo TVs, the big box TVs, and those things already suck, have pretty horrible picture, not a lot of brightness, and then you got this giant fuzzy Wii connection because they didn't really have the HDMI on
it was still right? Component.
No, those are component.
Yeah, as it was the red, yellow, white. It wasn't even the blue, right? It wasn't the nice ones.
It was just
it
was
just the red, yellow. Yeah.
Yeah, it was old school.
Yeah.
RCA. It wasn't even component. Yeah.
But yeah, that one's because I never had a Wii, but my nephew had a Wii and he loved it, enjoyed it. But yeah, it just felt like it felt good in the hands, and like Skyward Sword, it did feel like really responsive. But I mean, with this one, it should be pretty cool with the new motion controls because, I mean, it can't get worse. It could at least be more consistent.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who played it, it definitely had its moments of... I mean, like, it's a Zelda game, so Zelda already has this degree of polish that's always good. It's just it being the introduction of the Wii Motion Plus and it touting all of this, like, your slashes matter. You actually have to have the direction. That it was a cool gimmick that got old pretty quick, and I mean, like, I haven't played it in a very long time, but maybe I was just impatient. But it definitely felt some time. With something like the Switch, the accuracy will really help, and it'll potentially make it a better game.
And that's what's interesting too. I was trying to think about it because when we tried this last time, and what we were talking about earlier today, Jason, about how Nintendo is really kind of ahead of the game as far as technology and trying out new things, is that, I mean, no one else was doing motion controls at that time, but I don't even remember if there was many games up to that point that had certain things like that, to where when you had your basic combat, if you had to be slashing upwards or sideways, because a lot of games it's combo based. to where B, 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 and each, depending on your combo and how many times you pressed it, it changed the animation. To where I think, I mean, even you even had it in a sense with Ocarina of Time, to where if you had Z targeting and went forward, you poked, or you hit A, you do the jump, and there were certain things that you did. So I don't know if there was many things at that point in time that that had that much, I guess, advanced sword battle tactics. Yeah. I can't remember.
I think so. With the release of the Wii, I believe the game was called Red Steel, and I'm pretty sure that was like a tech demo. I would call it like a tech demo game because I don't think it was very long, and it's like a first-person samurai, not samurai, but like you're using a sword, and so I think that probably had some degree of that, but I don't know. I never played it, so I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it required like actual precision, because like in Skyward Sword, even like in the first area, there's this stupid fucking monster that you have to, it has 3 eyes, 3 heads that are an eye, and then it'll go in different configurations, and you had to slash it, and if you didn't get all 3, then it wouldn't die. And it's so fucking annoying. And so like that required precision, whereas I don't know if Red Steel did. But like I also mentioned it last time too, there was Metal Gear Solid Rising, which was a spin-off from the Metal Gear franchise. They introduced something like free form cutting, and so you'd go into the slowdown mode where you would actually be able to cut in any direction.
Oh, that's cool.
And that required precision, and it was executed really well. It was really fun, but like it did slow down time, which probably helped. And then it was limited to a joystick, which kind of like segues into what they're doing with the new one, having the option, if you don't want to play with the motion controls, you can actually play with just the right stick as your sword.
Or if you have the light, you know, the Switch light.
Right, yeah, if you can't detach your Joy-Cons.
Which is horrible.
So, I know. And so it offers kind of like a cool way of playing it, and that might operate really well.
I'm excited about that because what's funny thinking about it and talking about the new features with being able to use a controller and use the right stick, I was just thinking about it. I think Skyward Sword was one of the only Wii games I played with the motion controls. Like, because when I bought my Wii later on, like about halfway through its life cycle, and I bought it mainly to play Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, Star Fox 64. For old games. I bought it for the Virtual Console, but I also got Skyward Sword within a month of getting my Wii. But I don't think I played anything else. I think I tried a Madden game on Dad's Wii. I don't think I actually owned. I think the only actual Wii game I owned was Skyward Sword. But then what's interesting too about the Switch is I don't ever play with the motion control stuff. Like only parts on Zelda, like Breath of the Wild, is when I have to. Like for the the gyro shrines,
the specific shrines where you have to do some of the maneuver the ball or something.
Yeah, the gyro stuff. Because even sometimes with the bow and arrow, I actually had to turn off the motion because when you're sitting there and you're like this, and then you're trying to aim, and then your hands are moving, and it's like God damn it!
Yeah.
So,
I also turned it off in that game.
It's kind of handy. I got used to it pretty fast because I used to play a lot of Splatoon with my son, and so like you have to use that, and so I got used to fine tuning my aim with it. So and my thumbs suck. I'm not a good FPS anymore than I used to be, and so like just having a little tweak here and there was kind of nice. But I understand if you're just chilling.
Yeah, and when I play
go ahead.
I was excited because when I play handheld, I used a mix. So I would get my general aim with the controller, and then I could get it with the motion controls. But when I'm playing with the Pro controller, I'm like, nah, dog. I only want it when I'm doing the gyro. Like other than that, because when I got the Pro controller, I'm in game mode. Like,
that is the best controller of all time. I feel so good, except for the one thing. There's like one thing they should have just added, which is like the actuators and the triggers.
Yeah, Nintendo has always gotten shit for that, and they do digital instead of analog triggers. It's very annoying. It's very
But I mean,
annoying.
how many games use it that they have? I don't know. But like, if you want to do a little half tap for some game, it's kind of cool.
Right. It's not good for like racing games and things like that. But you know, their main racing game is Mario Kart. Actually, their best-selling game is Mario Kart.
Yeah.
And you press, you just there's no speed differentiation. It's just
It's
one
just
speed.
go.
Um, I was gonna say the thing that made Skyward Sword a little hard was the fact that it forced motion controls because you couldn't play it any other way. And so like I mean, Twilight Princess came out on the Wii. It was a launch title, and it gave the option of playing with the motion controls, where precision did not matter. You just frantically swing it, and it does the same action. But with something like Skyward Sword, it's like kind of abrasive because you have to do the motion controls. And so by offering another variant to it this time around, because they had to, you make a good point, Randy, with the Switch Lite. Like that's probably one of the only reasons they added it, or maybe because people were so angry. But um, but like now you have an option of not playing it in such a demanding way.
Yeah, I mean, did you feel like, because I didn't really, like I said, I didn't really play it all that much, but did you feel it felt like a gimmicky arcade game instead of like its main flagship type game?
I think there was a lot going on with Skyward Sword. Like that was when they were trying out a new art style. They were doing this whole thing like with Skyloft and the birds, and then they were trying to do the thing, kind of what was common in video games at the time of revisiting old locations, but they're changing in some way, shape, or form. And so there's a lot of that game that feels very gimmicky. I mean, like the sub weapons you get in that game are very motion based too. Like you get a whip, you get the beetle, which was a really big deal because you controlled it. I believe you controlled it by like maneuvering the Wiimote. Um, and so like unfortunately to me it felt like a lot of the things in that game were primarily gimmicky to really like bolster what the Wii does. And like maybe it was a comprehensive tech demo for the Wii Motion Plus because they wanted to show off what you could do with it.
Yeah. And then, like what we talked about earlier today, about how, and I mentioned, is Nintendo was always kind of ahead of the game as far as technology, and their eyes are always kind of a little bit bigger than their stomach, but it's bore fruit later, because that's a lot of things what people say about Skyward Sword is that there's a lot of ideas and concepts introduced within Skyward Sword that didn't necessarily pan out completely within the game itself and kind of took people for a loop. Like I remember the first time I fired it up in the stamina meter, I'm like, what the fuck is a stamina meter doing? It's a Zelda game. Like, why am I not being able to run fast right now? Especially because that first section takes so long, and I talked to everyone. I went into every room, and you're losing your stamina. So, I mean, there's kind of those things that were jarring for a Zelda title. But when you look at it, how it was implemented in Breath of the Wild, those things kind of changed how we accepted Zelda and what we found was part of a Zelda game. But I understand your kind of the idea about it was almost like a Metroidvania to where having to go back to a lot of levels and reusing bosses. And I think because then Skyloft was more of like a central hub kind of concept. So they changed some of those ideas around with Zelda. But I mean, that at the time, that was relevant because everyone was pissed off that Zelda was very formulaic at that point. Link to the Past set a very much a blueprint and a formula for what a Zelda game was. The first game was extremely open. You could go every which way. You didn't know what was going on. It was just like, hey, what's up? If you went to this cave, you got a sword. Now fuck off and do whatever. And then The Adventures of Link was very different. It was a little bit more linear in a sense, and it was side scroll. They experimented, but then when you went to Link to the Past, that is what everyone knows is a Zelda game, because a lot of people talked about Ocarina of Time being just a whole a Link to the Past on another level, like a 2 in the 3D realm, and then Majora expanded on it. But and very much see the pattern of games. And like up through Twilight Princess, almost every Zelda game played that way. Which is nothing wrong, because I think Link to the Past is one of the greatest games ever made. But I mean, it definitely set the standard of what a Zelda was. So I think they kind of broke away, because at that point, a lot of people were like, well, this is too linear. Blah, blah, blah. You have to go this way. And then that really changed with Breath of the Wild. It was another one of those things to where they're like, okay, you wanted on a completely open game. We just threw you in. Hey, you woke up half naked. Here's a Sheikah slate. You got an iPad, bro. Figure it out.
Shorts.
Like,
yeah. And then you're gonna get freaking cold, and you have to like that part was really freaking tough to figure out. Like, why am I freezing and I can't get up to the mountain? And that's like right in the beginning. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, sorry, to your point. Yeah, the whole changing the whole way what people expect from Zelda. It pisses people off, but then Nintendo always seems to know how to bring it full circle and make people happy.
They plant seeds.
Yeah,
and seeds don't grow in a day. Like, you don't grow a forest overnight. Because when you think about it, the seeds that were planted with Link to the Past have now come full fruition, and even the original Zelda. Because when you really look at Breath of the Wild, Breath of the Wild takes what kind of what Link to the Past did, what Ocarina of Time did, and then kind of what Skyward Sword did, and then applied it to the original Zelda. And you're like, okay, so we figured out all the shit you guys like, and you wanted it to just be an open world. Here you go. So that's kind of cool. I mean, and that's a beautiful thing about Zelda, is that, I mean, its stories are one thing, and we're gonna get to this later on. We kind of went off veering away from Skyward Sword, but it's like it's just one of those things. Like, Zelda just lets you be Zelda, like lets you do your thing, even sometimes when it's guided. But I don't know. I think Skyward Sword was a good experimental time for Nintendo, because they had experimental hardware. Because everyone, when the Wii came out, was really excited, but all the skeptics were like, "Oh, it's such a gimmick," blah, blah, blah. And then Sony and Xbox came out with what Sony had the camera, which had failed on the PlayStation before, like the PlayStation 2, and then the Kinect came out, and it was fucking terrible. So, like, everyone talks shit about Nintendo, but Nintendo executed it, and they sold more units than anyone else ever in history.
Well, they were able to tap into everybody, like everybody's grandma, freaking everybody's niece. They're able to capture everybody.
But yeah, I mean, Nintendo's been good about that, because that was the thing with the Wii, is that even if you were a Xbox or PlayStation guy, every household had a Wii. Like, it didn't matter. And I mean, that's really, and what you see now is that seed planted. And look at the Switch, is that everyone, like, Switches are still hard to get. It's not like you can walk into Walmart and they have a fucking wall of Switches. It's like, hey, we got 3.
It's been that way. And I mean, think about this year or last year, I should say. I mean, they're like $800 to try to find one is insane to get one at regular price.
Like, because right now with the pandemic created a scarcity for the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, but there's a Nintendo builds in scarcity to it in a certain extent to their consoles, but they just keep selling. For a system that's been out for 4 years now, it still sells almost as good as it did when it came out.
Absolutely.
That's a testament.
And like they truly got to capitalize from the pandemic, whereas I think the other consoles probably did, but because of the affordability and the portability of the Switch, it was kind of like a no-brainer, I think, for a lot of people. And then, just like Randy was saying, like, demographics vary for Nintendo, and so you can get a Switch and it can be for someone really young, and you can get a Switch, it can be for someone really old. So like, there's a lot of appealing aspects to Nintendo hardware, and that started with, like you said, the planting of the seeds of the Wii. And so
because I mean, you try to convince, I mean, you're 10 years old trying to convince your mom to get you an Xbox, and then they see Grand Theft Auto, they're like, hell freaking no, you're getting Mario. Thank you, I'll take that. I mean, awesome, you can get Doom and Witcher now on Switch.
Yeah, it's
insane.
expanded.
But, which is kind of outside their scope, but
yeah,
cool, though.
They've opened up. Like, they've been very friendly with third parties. But I mean, that's what's interesting and a testament about Nintendo as well, is that, I mean, I don't play my Switch a ton, but I bought it to play Zelda. Like, Breath of the Wild, I was willing to spend $500 to play Breath of the Wild and play it for over 200 hours. I got my money out of it. I haven't finished Mario Odyssey yet. It was a fun game, but the fact that the Switch, yeah, I know you love Mario Odyssey, and I need to play it. I have fun playing it. That's a whole nother conversation.
Oh yeah, yeah. Next episode.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact that it could be a $500 Zelda or Mario machine, yeah. It's still worth it. I would still pay $500 to play Breath of the Wild again. Like, that's why what we're going to talk up in a little bit about the Super Nintendo Switch, which is a fucking awesome name and they should keep it. But I'm willing to pay another $500 to play Breath of the Wild too. So that's where Nintendo has you, is that you're like, it's fucking Zelda. It's Mario. It's Smash Bros. Like, yeah, there's no question. To where a PlayStation and Xbox, it's like, yeah, they have their different exclusives. PlayStation's maybe better, but most of the titles that come out are cross-platform, and you can get those on the Switch now. They play better on the other systems because of capabilities and whatnot. But there's not a lot of difference per se between Xbox and PlayStation. They're kind of interchangeable.
Yeah. Besides first parties, you're totally right. Like,
yeah,
for the most part, they're both like a comparable machine that plays the same things and can do the same stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can just throw a rock at one and be happy with it. You'll just you get those people that, you know, just shit all over each other's systems, but if you had one of them, you're happy, you know?
Yeah. And like, for me, like, the main reason I went with Xbox is just because of the ecosystem, is that all my games are on Xbox, because I've been on Xbox. I wasn't a PlayStation guy. Randy's the PlayStation guy in our, because that we kind of had that growing up as a group of friends, is that our household, mine and Jason's, was the Nintendo household. Randy had the PlayStations, and then for a while it was Ethan and was it Matt Scott that had the Xbox? So we had a couple of different friends who had Xboxes. And then eventually I got the Xbox 360, so I became the Nintendo/Xbox. And it went from there, but that's where my ecosystem is. To where if I had gone to PlayStation at the PlayStation 3, I would be a PlayStation guy. It's just how it works. But I am always a Nintendo guy.
Yeah,
no matter what.
Same here. It's like it started off at Super Nintendo when I was another tangent. I'm going to try to keep it short, but I was freaking 4 or 5 years old, and I had no idea this thing even existed. Besides, I think I had the original Nintendo for a second, but it was my sister's. But like, my mom got it for us, and we just, like, my brain just blew up. Like, how the fuck do I get this on my TV now? Like, you had to use the coaxial, like, adapter thing, and our TV was, like, made out of wood, so it was but anyways, yeah, so everybody loves Nintendo, and if you don't, you freaking suck. But then you have your other consoles.
yeah.
Well, and then I guess, like, just to continue and kind of maybe conclude the Skyward Sword part 2 is, like, what is cool with it is we're getting cool Joy-Con, and they are cool. Like, they are very well designed. They're a cool color scheme. I am a big fan, and it's fucking crazy we don't have 800 different color Joy-Cons out there like Nintendo. I can't believe they're not capitalizing on that. But they do have these, you know, every once in a while, really cool sets. And so that's like a benefit of this port coming to the Switch, is we get some pretty fucking awesome Joy-Cons. Yeah,
that was one of the bigger parts of the Skyward Sword announcement for people. They're like, oh, cool, Skyward Sword. But those Joy-Cons are dope.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, seriously, though, you said it at the top, but, like, what a bitch slap from Anuma. Like, to actually appear in the Direct and be like, I know you guys are seeing me and think that I'm going to talk about the new Breath of the Wild, but I'm not. Here's this. And then it's kind of just, like, aching.
Yeah, that's rough.
And what's funny about that is, going back to kind of what we were talking about, you're like, oh, that's not what I wanted, but I'm gonna buy it.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like I was being so negative about it, but I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna get the game.
They're still gonna get my money. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know, kind of like the Resident Evil showcase, you have this like expectation and like, you better freaking do this. I need this for my own brain. But no, they don't do it.
Well, and like with the Resident Evil one, we did the thing about it, but they did well as far as like, oh, RE8 looks cool, but what about, weren't you gonna announce 4? And I want Veronica, but then it turned out 4's in development hell right now. But that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, so that was interesting. And the Joy-Cons are dope. The Master Sword and the Hylian Shield. I'm even tempted to buy them, even though I don't even use Joy-Cons. I'm very much tempted. And then so now we're gonna have 8 playable Zelda games on the Switch, which is dope because that's something we talked about, which Nintendo kind of revolutionized with the digital console on the Wii. So now we have the original. We got Zelda 2, Link to the Past. We have the remake of Link's Awakening. We have Skyward Sword now. The 2 Hyrule Warrior games. What am I missing? I'm at 7.
Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild, of course. What the fuck? How'd I miss that? 9 if you count Cadence of Hyrule.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is just Zelda galore on this system. I mean, there's a lot of Zelda you can play. And then there's talks about Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask HD, and maybe even Wind Waker, because they have them already. They just got to port them to come out.
In HD, they have them. In HD, they're ready.
Yeah.
They have them. They have them. Nintendo, you have them.
You have them, exactly. To wrap it up for the Skyward Sword, it will be out on July 16th. You can pre-order it now. Nintendo, hook us up for plugging you and making you money. And it's right around my birthday, so that'll probably be a birthday present to myself. But we kind of touched on it before while we were talking about Skyward Sword in Zelda in general, but Breath of the Wild 2 has been heating up lately, which we also mentioned the quote-unquote leak of the Super Nintendo Switch and some of its specs is really leading to speculation as far as when Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out and what it's going to kind of look like. And I think it'd be fun to talk about what we're looking forward to and our own speculations and wants for Breath of the Wild. So take it away, anyone.
I mean, I think Breath of the Wild did everything so great that, like, obviously we want more of the same to a certain extent, but like one area that was clearly not clearly lacking, that sounds overtly negative, but I like could use improvement is dungeons, because we kind of didn't have that in this game. We had the Divine Beasts, which offered a mechanical puzzle of some sort, which was fun. It was cool. I liked the idea, but between the 4 it was fairly homogenous, where you're almost doing the same thing, and it didn't really like add any of that variability or like that cool stuff that you get from a normal Zelda dungeon. So I think like part of the hope is to really incorporate like true Zelda dungeons from the past.
Yeah. I agree. That was the one thing that was really missing from Breath of the Wild, because this is as amazing a 12 out of 10 game that Breath of the Wild was, a greatest of its generation kind of game. The only thing, other than one of the other things I wanted to talk about that was missing from Breath of the Wild was dungeons. And as much as the shrines were mini dungeons and the Divine Beasts were also a mini dungeon within themselves, I think that was the only thing I could feel that one of two things that I really felt that Breath of the Wild left out. But the shrines were cool. I do really like the inclusion of those, because before, I think with the limitations of some of the systems, that you did even more micro versions of puzzles and ideas for heart pieces. Like in fucking Ocarina of Time, you got the Rumble Pack, and you stood by this one fucking tree in the middle of Hyrule Field, and you put a bomb next to it, and you get in a hole, and there's a fucking cow next to a heart piece. Like, that's what it was before. It was kind of semi-random, but it was, in a sense, a puzzle, and there were certain things that they did, which was fun. I mean, I always got all the heart pieces, like, as part of my thing. I mean, I was a mini completionist, especially because of Zelda, like in Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past. I had to get everything, but that's what I do. But I think with Breath of the Wild, it added a cool new twist. Instead of just like, oh, it's just up here, or you found this random hole. It's like, oh no, you have to solve this puzzle. That was really cool. But
Yeah.
I would love dungeons, because when you look at some of the Zelda games, I mean, Twilight Princess, I don't remember as many of the dungeons per se, but like between Majora's Ocarina and Link to the Past, those dungeons are so memorable. Like, I know how to beat all of those bosses. I know where things are. Like, I can route those levels pretty well just by memory. Like, I can zoom through a playthrough of Ocarina of Time in a good amount of time just because I've played it so many times. I fucking love those games. But it's like, it's one of those cool elements that I think they missed out upon a little bit.
Well, yeah, and they're like, at least for a first-time player of Ocarina, it's super challenging. Like, I see my son playing those and just getting like, just racking his brain. He's like, what the hell do I do? Like Dodongo's Cavern and stuff, where you have to blow up the bombs and get the stairs to come down and things like that. Just like with the shrines, you got all the cool puzzles. And what I loved about them is that you had so many, which I do like, the whole collectible like the whole collectible thing. And you had different ways of getting to them and things like that. But what I did read is that there's all these different ideas on what the shrines should be. Should they be more like dungeons or more like little mini games or something? And so I wonder what they're going to do. I bet you they are going to try to expand upon those like they probably tried to do, but then didn't. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it just doesn't, I mean, like, the shrines worked out so well that it would be sad if they omitted it from this one. And, like, we've clearly gotten this glimpse of what seems to be an underground area from the one trailer that we've gotten. And so, like, that leaves opportunity once again for, like, the first shrines, which are ones that are underground. And, like, there's still the possibility of that because, like, it would feel weird if they had all the shrines from the first game and didn't, like, either didn't change them or they did change them. Like, it would just feel kind of odd.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that it's still something that they can integrate. And then also, like, getting pieces of heart, or, like, not even pieces of heart, but, like, the actual heart container and the stamina was really cool. Like, you gotta make your own decision. It was, like, RPG light almost.
Exactly.
And so, like, I think getting rid of that too would also be another unfortunate omission.
It would hurt more than it would help, in a sense.
I mean, like, I have so much faith in Nintendo that they'd be able to integrate it in another way that works awesomely. Like, I if they even brought back, like, heart containers that you just found, I think a lot of people would like that too, because that's just a fun aspect of most Zelda games as well. But this one was just cool because it let you have the choice, even though fuck you, Nintendo, for not letting me have symmetrical, or, like, 2 full lines of hearts, or not 3 full things of stamina. Like, what is that? What is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like their little thing of like not pleasing everybody. It's like, do you want more stamina or more health? Like, what do you? But you can't have both.
Yeah. And the
As, like, a
aesthetics of it.
perfectionist OCD person, it's like, fuck you, Nintendo.
Just like a visual thing. You're like,
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
or I'm missing
but-
something.
yeah. But yeah, so, like, I think that the shrines could still be shrines, and dungeons can coexist because they're both so great. And, like, what's so good about dungeons is how they are all themed, right? Like, you have the forest dungeon, you have the water temple, you have, like, Dodongo's cave. Like, they're all themed, whereas the divine beasts are themed, but aesthetically they're all the same.
Yeah.
They all have the same enemies, and then they all have a variant of the same boss. So it's like, you're not really getting that Zelda feel you got from the other ones because you don't have the change in scenery. Or, like, they tried to do something great in Breath of the Wild where it's like, here's the Sheikah slate, here's all the abilities you're going to get right off the bat, go away, go have fun. But like what's so fun about the older ones too is like you're like, oh, I just got this item and that's how I'm gonna solve that puzzle that I saw earlier in the dungeon.
Exactly, those layers of a Zelda game. Because that was the one thing that people talk about linearity of Zelda games. Is that it's like, oh, well, you have to get this item to beat this boss, and then you go to the next place, and it's blah blah. It builds on top of each other, which, in a sense, is a logical way to build a game. But I think with Breath of the Wild, because they did give you all those things up, because you don't really gain new items per se in Breath of the Wild. It's like you start out, it's like, here's the shit you need to play this game. So it's like you've got your bombs, you got the magnet, you got all these things that like this is what you're gonna be doing, and then it's just like it's variants of weapons. Like how are you gonna fight? But it's you don't add new essential things per se, which would be cool to reintroduce. And if they do it correctly, you don't have to do it in a linear fashion, because that's kind of how the Divine Beast worked out, is that you could play Breath of the Wild any way you choose. You don't have to go to the Zors first or to Death Mountain first or whatever. There's no set path, which is very cool. But I think if you incorporated certain special items, that the dungeons themselves, like you won't need something from the forest dungeon to beat the water dungeon, because that's kind of like how things were built, like with Ocarina, is that like, oh, you got this item 2 dungeons ago, but if you didn't get this item you couldn't beat this dungeon. So if you don't have things like that per se, to where it's like if you had this item from a different dungeon, certain things may help, or there's certain areas that you can get into, because you can incorporate shrines that way, which would be kind of cool. If there's shrines within dungeons that you have to come back to because you don't have a certain item, that'd be cool, because it doesn't stop you from beating the dungeon, but it makes that area Metroidvania basically.
Or like Mega Man, where it's like, yeah, you could beat the boss, but if you had the thing, it makes it a lot easier.
Exactly. And there's also things like Mega Man X was fucking genius, is that those levels were replayable because they were very Metroidvania in a sense that like you beat the boss, so the background and certain things are different and the level has changed, but there's like the heart containers or like the energy containers or the power-ups, you couldn't get certain ones without certain different things, so it made you come back to that area.
Yeah. And like I didn't play it, so I don't know fully, but in A Link Between Worlds, that's the 3DS sequel to Link to the Past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In it, instead of finding weapons or like the sub items, I think you actually bought them from this like bunny thing.
Interesting.
And you got to choose which ones you were buying. So like you can go in any order that you wanted. So if you wanted to get the magic wand, you can do that, and then that would help you get to a certain area. So like they've started to experiment with this idea of using sub weapons, but then also letting you play the game how you want. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's possibility of that. I also think like as long as like if you're finding a sub weapon in a dungeon that helps you complete the dungeon, I think that's fine. It's just like if overall other things are locked, that then prevents you from progressing the game in the way that you want. Then it becomes harder with how Breath of the Wild was just so open and you got to choose your own path.
Yeah, but I mean, in the same sense, when you completed a Divine Beast, you got a new ability.
Right.
So like,
right, and that made it easier to do other things. Like,
exactly. And like some of the towers, which is one of the cooler parts, not cooler parts, but an amazing part of Breath of the Wild, is that there was a few of them that you couldn't get without Rivali's Gale. Mm-hmm. So if you didn't beat the bird one mm-hmm. and get the Rivali's Gale, you couldn't get those towers.
Right, or it was a lot easier. I think, because I know which one you're talking about, and what was really cool is what I did is I lit a fire, and then I...
So, yeah, there's way... Yeah. Okay.
Which is so cool about Breath of the Wild already.
Yeah.
Like, you can do cool things like that.
Yeah. I mean, like...
oops.
Go
sorry.
ahead,
yeah.
No, go. You can finish. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say that like those items are cool add-ons that like Urbosa's Fury I loved because mm-hmm. it would help with specific enemies, and so it was a nice thing to have, or Daruk's Protection and things like that. But mm-hmm. it wasn't like a necessity to get through the game.
That's true. Yeah.
So like that's just what's so nice about it. And I hope that they would be creative in their implementation of sub weapons or sub items like that. Like even if uh you got the little Sheikah drip in a dungeon, and then it's still a Sheikah slate, but your Sheikah slate's now a fucking hook shot. Like, just cool things like that.
Because that's the other thing. That's the only other part that I was missing from Breath of the Wild was a hook shot. But go ahead, Randy.
Sorry. No, what I was going to say is that going with the whole Mega Man thing and getting stuff that might help your journey but still not prohibit you from finishing it is like being able to like create weapons that, you know, with like ancient debris and whatever it's called, ancient parts, screws and all that stuff, where it's like, and eventually it'll break, but you know, like I know I need this weapon because it's going to help me out, and so you go around collecting crap to build it. But yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's just that they could become creative in that sense and still let you do what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what was really cool about the upgrading of the clothes, the armor in the last one, is that the gathering part of Breath of the Wild is really based towards that. So, I mean, you did some really cool things, and it kept the Great Fairies interesting, because it could be kind of stagnant to always be like, the Great Fairies are the same thing in every game, but it'd be cool if you could upgrade your weapons, and because that was one of the things that some people didn't like, I guess, was bringing in that like Souls kind of weapon system to where things break and whatnot. I didn't have a problem with it because there were so many cool weapons and so many different ways to use the weapons and plan out, in a sense, what you're doing.
And it gave you the opportunity for variety in your gameplay, which like is kind of different for a Zelda, because you're used to having the Master Sword or something like the Master Sword where it all does the same thing. But like this introduced 3 different classes where it's like you have your normal sword, your like broadsword or large sword, and then a spear. And so like you get to choose how you play. And so the weapon durability gives you those opportunities or options to play it in a different way. And so it's like I knew I always got rid of the big ones for the most part because I didn't like how they played. But I kept a lot of spears and regular swords.
Yeah, it's all about how you approached it. It was super cool. But then, okay,
well,
go
one
for
more
it.
thing. So I actually did my research better, and basically, when you in Skyward Sword, there's the beetle, right? And so with Breath of the Wild, there's concept art of the Sheikah like thing. I don't know. It like attaches to Link's arm like a claw, and so you're able to shoot the beetle out of this thing, and it also transforms into like a freaking hammer or like a bow thing, and like there could be some form of that coming along the way because they scrapped it, but there is concept art of it, which could be like a thing like, whoa, we want to implement that hook shot or some other way of upgrading a Sheikah thing. I don't know. That's all. That's all I have for it.
Yeah,
and like that would be really cool. And I think the things that they gave you in Breath of the Wild, like the stopping time thing, the stasis, the freezing, and the what else is there?
the
bombs.
bomb and the magnet.
Oh, and the magnet. Like those are all cool ideas that worked really well and like were cool show off of their physics and stuff.
Yeah.
But like I think incorporating some of those stuff. I mean, like you brought it up, John, about how the hook shot would be like a really big thing that you'd want, and I think a lot of people would agree because the game was all about traversal, and so like think of all the cool traversal you could do with a hook shot, and it could still like. It could still like rely on stamina. Like it shouldn't be like a easy pop out type deal, but like it would be so fun to hook shot your way.
And like even because we were talking about it being underground in the one trailer we got, and it's almost like that concept from the old games of Light and Dark World or Future Link, Young Link, whatever. You can have the two kind of worlds. But before I get to that, with that idea with the hook shot, is that imagine having a hook shot and Rivali's Gale with the sail, and it's like that is such a cool idea because it makes traversing a whole nother level. Because even if it still used stamina, it's like you could be fucking Batman.
Exactly.
And while you're
flying
falling,
up.
maybe there's like a slow motion where it allows you to kind of, you know,
you're just like,
twist yourself and freaking bam, hell yeah, keep it going, parkour.
Be so cool.
that'd be like, especially in
like
the areas.
Like saying it's like Batman, like it is like Batman Arkham City and things like that. Like that'd be really cool. And with the prospect of however in the future this new game is, like if there are buildings, and then maybe you can be hook-shotting off of buildings and then launch yourself in paraglide. Like that would be so cool.
Because even if you use the existing worlds, like in the overworld of what Hyrule is, like in places like Death Mountain or in the desert, where you have those big cliffs and those like monolithic cliffs that you're like, how the fuck am I gonna climb up this thing? Because I know there's one fucking seed up there, one of 1,000, and I'm gonna climb up there because it's fucking Zelda and I have to get everything. Like, but imagine if you could do that. You Rivali's Gale, and then you hook shot, and then you jump off, and then you hook shot, and then you climb. Like, just that, I could do that for 200 hours.
Exactly.
Like, that sounds... I mean, I did it anyways without a hook shot. I want to do it again with a hook shot. And then, like what we were talking about, if there's an underground theme and world to it, if there's the two different worlds, another way of, like, either putting heart containers or something with the energy out in the wild, other than just having new shrines, is that having something like a hook shot could, in a way, replace Rivali's Gale underground by if you have like cave systems or something. They did something like that to where if you're climbing up a cave wall, but once you have the hook shot, you can get to like certain different areas, and you could use it in a way to traverse an underground cavernous kind of area, because that's just something that they didn't necessarily touch on too much with Breath of the Wild, as there's areas where you could climb where you're pretty much upside down kind of thing, right? There's some cliffs, but if you had a cavernous map, that adds a whole other thing. So instead of having your stamina wasting or trying to like climb on a wall like this, maybe you're hanging from a hook shot kind of thing. So there's different ways that you could incorporate another world. I like how we got, sorry, that was my son. We got an echo because it's coming on my mic, but he's probably right behind Jason's door. So that was a really cool kind of effect. But that adds a whole other level to what this game could be and what we want to see with Above and Below or Light and Dark kind of world. Because then it's also then underground dungeons. And I really like what you said, Jason. I know I talk for long periods of time. But the idea of new shrines being the original shrines or older shrines is a really cool concept. And we didn't talk about this before, and it kind of hit me, is that so with the Hyrule that you have in Breath of the Wild, there's a lot of references to older Zelda games, and they tried to make the map very similar to Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time, and how the geography is. And there's the ruins of Lon Lon Ranch, like there's these references to these older games. But what's really interesting about that, what you said, is it could be even a further reference, is that it could be a world built on top of a world, because the idea of Zelda is that it's this reoccurring struggle between good and evil, and there's these timelines and things happen, but imagine it's like, if it's just layers. Mm-hmm. So maybe you could reference things from the original Zelda or Link to the Past, like certain like temples or things. You can have ruins from other eras of Hyrule that somehow had just been built over. I thought that was really cool that you touched on that, and I want to talk about that because that seems super cool to me. Because then you can reference
that gives that could be an easy narrative thing to tie into, like especially with presumably that the thing they find in the trailer being like actual Ganondorf, not like Calamity Ganon.
Calamity, yeah.
But like this idea of an old ancient world that was then built on top of or something, and so like. I don't know. I have hopes for this game where it's like you could have two simultaneous maps going on and they're just as big as each other. I don't know how likely that is.
Yeah,
but I think that would be fucking dope.
Yeah, that'd be insane. Yeah. But like to that point is that they've kind of set this insane stage of this world, and they put so much time and focus on that, which then they probably had limited resources towards the other things we probably want, which they probably will then pile on for the next one, which I hope. But yeah, having an insane cave system where maybe like the hook shot and stuff can be like a puzzle. The traversing could be its own puzzle where like maybe like you said, hanging, and all of a sudden you have to figure out how the heck you're gonna use your stamina to get to somewhere else. But yeah, because the cave system could be sick, and I could see them making it kind of freaky and dark, and because it kind of has to be. I mean, it can't be all kiddie down there. Can't be freaking Chuck E. Cheese, even though that's freaking weird too.
Creepy in its own way. And then like the other thing too is like you're right, John, and they made such an effort to be so self-referential to all the other Zelda games in Breath of the Wild. Like, I mean, I haven't even explored most of the map. I'm only at 42% completion of that game. So that, and I have over 200 hours. So like, it shows that I haven't seen much. And I know just from people posting stuff over the years that there's a lot of reference to older Zelda games. So it gives them more opportunity for that and them to build off of it. And then also create a new cool timeline. Like,
exactly
within Zelda.
That was another thing, is that they never kind of announced and clarified where Breath of the Wild happens. Is that because with a lot of people hate the Zelda timeline because it's kind of convoluted and there's different things. I don't care. I find it cool. I dig lore. I fucking love that shit. I have all 3 Hyrule Storios back there. But it gives us a cool level. I kind of lost my thought. Fuck. My brain. Shit, what was I talking about? So you could have
talking about
levels.
It being self-referential and timeline.
I had a good idea.
And
the
you didn't know where
timeline.
Breath of the Wild fit in.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll get you back there. So when you think about it, Breath of the Wild could be at the end of the timeline because the Sheikah Slate, it's technology and it's the most advanced technology we've kind of seen, except maybe if you count Spirit Tracks because there's fucking trains. It's like steam engine, it's like steam time. I don't know. I haven't played that game, but I mean, Link has a magical fucking iPad. Like, so it's in Hyrule ideals. It's pretty far in the fucking future in a sense, and even like when you think about the Guardians. Mechanical, it's future in Hyrule's history kind of idea. Fuck, where was I gonna go from there? Damn it! I had such a good idea. I lost it. I hate my life. But
there is edit. We're not live on.
I know, but a meltdown's not bad either.
God fucking damn it!
His is not live aid up on stage. Just kidding.
Fuck, where was I going? I had something. And I fucking lost it.
Timelines.
Because you could reference the old games, and you're at the time. Because you could be at an endpoint in a timeline to where you can reference everything in the past.
It's like the Matrix. It just keeps happening over and over.
But like even referencing, if they wanted to, like, maybe this is the thing that cohesively ties a lot of the Zelda games together that aren't in the same timelines. Like, I mean, like, by having the Rito people, Rito, it's Rito, right?
Yeah, Rito, yeah. Because technically...
that's tying in Wind Waker, which is, like, a different timeline, right? Like,
yeah. And because the Rito are technically the Zora evolved, right? Because the idea from Wind Waker was that because the whole world became an ocean, the Zora kind of became obsolete in a sense because they could roam fucking everywhere, is that they came to land and became Ritu. I think that's the running theory. I don't know if it's confirmed. I think it was confirmed. It's like I have to. I know they're all checking it. I'm like, I might have to pull out the book. I have it back there. I just talked about it.
Well, yeah,
it's not just nerd.
Exactly. That's how it should be.
Yeah, so it's the Zora's evolved over the span of a century into Rito.
Yeah, so then with Breath of the Wild, you still have Zora and you have Ritu, so it could be on a different branch of the timeline.
Right.
There's bottom line, end of Meltdown on a tangent, is that there's so many cool things you could do with this new title that you could reference back and kind of clarify things, because people do think that the Zelda timeline is convoluted and that there's so many different ways, and they threw it together just to make people happy because everyone wanted a timeline, And then when they gave it to him, like, well, that's not what I wrote in my fan fiction. Like, so there's that whole kind of aspect with fanboys and fan groupings, but it's a really cool opportunity, I think, for Nintendo to expand, especially if it's going to be on this new Super Nintendo Switch. Nintendo. Just send me a Zelda, like a Master Sword, and I would be so happy.
I think I have my Master Sword over here.
Yeah, it'd be right there.
Speaking of like the new Super Nintendo Switch or whatever they might end up calling it, though, that's where I kind of have hope for my idea of the two separate maps.
That's what I mean.
Because if they're able to beef up the processing power and the RAM, like whatever's the SSD, whatever they have, like in order to load these two worlds, I think that like it's now more possible than ever. It just becomes a problem if like it doesn't run well on the normal Switch, right? Because obviously
that's true.
This is just going to be something like a PS4 Pro or like an Xbox One X. So like you can't necessarily make something that's only functional on the new one, but it just gives me hopes that they find a way to incorporate something like that, because that would be awesome. And it'd be weird to have a different map almost after playing Breath of the Wild.
Because it's like a direct sequel. It'd be like, because I mean, the one time like with Majora's Mask, they did it very well because Link kind of falls into an alternate reality with what is it? With I want to say Chimera, but that's Termina. That's what it's called. So it's kind of like this alternate world, and that was a great fucking game. It worked. They did it perfect. There's nothing wrong. Another 12 out of 10 game. Like underlined, there's Nintendo can do no wrong with these games. They fucking ruled. Played them for over 200 hours, whatever. But it's some cool opportunities, especially because in the past you've had these different dynamics. Is that Link to the Past had light and dark, Ocarina of Time had young and old, Termina was just trippy, and you had the whole time concept, and that the world built upon itself depending on what you did, which for N64 was nuts. Like when you think about that and that concept of a game with how much depth there was for N64, like 1998. Like that game is insane for 1998. I don't know how people's brains didn't fucking Kennedy all over the place.
Yeah, with like 40 megabytes to work with.
Yeah. It's like my phone has way more information on it than Majora's Mask, and that game was fucking deep. But there's already that precedent, whatever you want to say. I can't fucking talk. Set for those ideas. I mean, even with Twilight Princess, you had the Twilight realms and the regular realms. Wind Waker had the under the sea. He was hanging out with Sebastian and Ariel and shit. Like, so there's this.
They always do this pattern of a two world almost. Like even with Skyward Sword, which we didn't talk about because I always suppress this fucking part of the game from my brain, is they have the Skyloft and then the like actual ground world, but also taking from Twilight Princess, they did something where you had to collect these like light orbs, but it was timed and you couldn't get hit, and if you did, you lost all of them. It's terrible. It's so bad. You do it before. It's so bad. It's so bad. And so anyway, that also had this idea of like two worlds type thing. So like it wouldn't be out of the question to ask to hope, you know, for like a two world thing.
Because even if you don't have to deal with the overworld of what Hyrule was in Breath of the Wild, is that it would be cool to see civilization proceeding. So now that there's the Calamity isn't on ground or the above level, you'd basically use those as like just towns to visit. Because if you keep the same map, it's not like you're going to be doing the same shrines. You've seen all this place. You know it's there. I fucking remembered. So part of callbacks and with the history within Breath of the Wild, remember one of the quests was taking pictures of the big ass shark thingies, the bones.
Oh yeah.
Right, the behemoth thing.
It's just like this one dude's like, yeah, I want to see them all, and then you take pictures of them, and that's it. Breath of the Wild 2, man. Like, maybe Ganon, like the pure version of Ganon, is one of these things you could kill him. Like, there's so much lore that was within Breath of the Wild that wasn't classic Zelda lore, is that you could reference classic Zelda, but also create the new lore that you left open-ended. There's some really cool possibilities.
Yeah, start to blend that crap. I mean, like, I don't really. I mean, I didn't dig into it, but like the freaking crazy dragon that you see when you go into that bridge, which like feels so like serendipitous when you're just crossing it and all of a sudden this thing's freaking going. I'm sure it's planned, but you're like, oh my god, like it's so amazing.
I remember the first time I saw the dragon. I got to that bridge and saw a dragon. I'm like, nope.
Yeah, you're
not fighting the dragon right now.
Yeah.
And I didn't come back for hours. And then I was like, oh, he's the nice dragon, but you still shoot him and take his scales and teeth and shit. But I was like, that first time I was like, nope.
Yeah.
Like,
My
you're like crossing all nonchalant and you're like, what the?
My old roommate from college, he's just now playing Breath of the Wild, and he messaged me right when he was like, what the fuck is that giant dragon? I was like, don't worry about it.
I love how that's a universal response, because no one, as far as what I remember when hearing about Breath of the Wild, no one told you about fucking dragons.
Well, and there's no grand cutscene that you would normally think of in any other game too, or even a Zelda game, right? Like, you think that there'd be like a cutscene of, I can't remember their names, but like it just emerging out of somewhere and then some overlying text or speech over. But no, it's just like you're in this part of the map and there's a giant fucking dragon.
Well, because they like
it's
knew that you were gonna kind of slightly see out of the corner of your eye. They just like are geniuses like that and mind readers, and you're just like, what the?
Well, especially because that one it's not Din, because Pharaoh is the fire, right?
No, Din is fire.
Din is fire, and then Pharaoh
is the green wind.
Oh, so is Pharaoh. That one was the first one I saw, because you get to that bridge.
Yeah, me too.
And because it was like nighttime, and like it comes out of the water, so you're just kind of walking around, it's like, you're like, oh shit. But I mean, I thought that was super cool, because the last one is up on the mountain. Because that's part of another quest.
Yes.
That was, the side quests were awesome. Overall, because
it's gonna be
we
like,
can literally talk about this game for fucking hours. I mean, we've already been on here for what, hour and a half, and we still have a whole nother section. There's more to come, but there's more.
You gave us the fucking Sheikah, or not Sheikah,
Yiga clan.
The Yiga clan guy.
Yeah.
He's so cool. Like, what a cool random boss that you threw in this, where there's like not really many other random bosses like that. That was
you're
so
talking
cool.
to like the ninja dude, or who you're talking about?
The guy
ninja
with, like,
dude.
where they have where you have to sneak through with the bananas.
Yeah.
The stealth
and then
section,
at the end, Master something. I can't think of his name.
I can't remember his name right now either. But it was a cheesy boss fight. It was super cheesy, but it was super fun. It was a good flavor to add to the game, because you had the tests of strength, and then even though the Divine Beasts bosses were variants, it was very much rinse and repeat. That was a really cool thing that stood out, and that's, I agree, along with the dungeons. That's a classic Zelda thing, because I remember fighting Dodongo and the mini bosses within like Jabu Jabu's belly, or in Link to the Past. I think it's like the second dungeon you do, where it's got the worm on the platform and it knocks you off and you fall to a different thing. Like, there's memorable bosses. Ghost Ganon, the witches from Ocarina of Time. It's like, and this is leaking into what we want to talk about next, as far as like classic Zelda memories and things we love about it. But I mean, you associate with those bosses so much. And the original Zelda had a fucking dragon. Like, there's these things that you remember, and it's interesting because there's such a variety. Breath of the Wild had a good variety of enemies, because they had leveled enemies, and you have different ones in each sections. They did it very good as far as geography and areas. But, I mean, and then the sub-bosses were spread throughout. You had, like, the golems, and you had the
Lionels.
Those things are
Ewoks,
freaking
like,
tough.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you had these. It's just like it didn't. Like I couldn't tell you what Thunderblight Ganon does. That's like different from Water Blight Ganon. Like,
Other than you have to throw the metal at him, because I couldn't figure out
Exactly.
the first time.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know that one was a pain in the ass.
I mean, I didn't
So,
even
like-
pay attention to that. I was like, "There's another one. Just fight it," and
Yeah.
that was pretty much it. It's like, "Oh yeah,"
And like
that's
it's like all of them. It's like just shoot them in the eye because it's so fucking obvious. But like so like that's where it's it'd be nice if there were more boss variety because like as you said, not only do we remember the bosses, but we remember the sub bosses because every dungeon had one. Like it was just
Yeah.
something cool that you always gotta do. And so I think adding something like that really really helps. And like the one from the Yiga clan was such a callback to the original because it did use like a single gimmick to beat him, which was cool.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
it reminded me of an old Zelda, and it wasn't a hard boss fight. It was just fun. It was really fun.
Well, yeah, and also to add more flavor to him is like because the world is so intense and beautiful, is to like add more to the approach to your mini bosses and things. Because like going through those like freaking caverns and not caverns, but the crevasses and things like that. I mean, they could just really expand a bunch on those.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because, I mean, that was the thing, like what you mentioned, Jason, about the mini bosses and sub bosses within the levels. It's like, I remember in the Fire Temple fighting or was it Dodongos? Or was the two lizards?
Yeah, Dodongo.
And, like,
And you're on those like
Yeah, and
platforms
you're
with
on
the
the
freaking lava.
platforms. And then in Jabu Jabu's belly, you have the squid thing. Yeah. And like, so there's the sub bosses are just as memorable as the actual bosses, and adds to it because Breath of the Wild had such a great, like, it had a variety in enemies, but like also characters, as it really was a callback in a sense. I mean, they did it in Skyward Sword a little bit from what I played, but really even Majora's Mask is that there's so much going on with the other people in Hyrule, is that when you play through Breath of the Wild and you put in as much time and you try to get all the side quests and you talk to everyone, there's a really cool story about the people of Hyrule. And I think that's something that if you don't do that, you do yourself a disservice with Breath of the Wild. Because if you just play through and just do the Divine Beasts and get Ganon, it's like, yeah, you played a Zelda game, but you didn't really experience a Zelda game. Like building the town and having the guy marry the...
Terrytown.
Yeah, Terrytown was awesome. It was such a great thing, and then once you finish it and the weird dude pops up on the bottom, because one of my favorite parts of Breath of the Wild was being able to buy the Darkling suit, but you got it from the fucking weird dude who hangs out below Town. Like, the levels of that game are so great. And I guess that's a good segue, because we've been touching on it, is that I also want to talk about, because it's Zelda's 35th anniversary, about some of our favorite Zelda moments.
Bears.
Yeah, so
Put you on
like-
the spot, Randy.
no, can't do that to me. One of my favorite ones was getting the longsword in Ocarina of Time. It's not necessarily like anything super cool or anything, but that you can do it, and that it takes a few times to, like, when you first discover it. And actually, how the hell do you even figure that out to begin with?
Well, you could get the longsword, but the crazy fun story part is Big Goron Sword.
Yeah, the big Goron, yeah.
Because you have to do the timed thing, because you have the longsword and then it breaks. Oh no,
Yeah.
because you get the Goron Sword from Big Goron, but it breaks because his little brother is in Goron City. But then you take the broken one to Big Goron, but you have to like go and get material, and then you have to get eye drops for him because soot got in his eye, but you have to have the special cuckoo, and like, it was a cool timed story quest.
Yeah,
That was
that's
a
what I'm
lot of
talking
fun.
about. Yeah, not the
Yeah.
just getting the sword, but doing all the things. And yeah, like the eye drops had a certain half life, and so you had to,
Right.
that was
Right.
Yeah, and
badass.
you had to
like
run, and
that
you
kind of
couldn't-
thing He's awesome.
Yeah, because you couldn't warp there. Because if you warp there, it just killed it.
Yeah,
and it was
it's like
no, you're
took the same
cheating.
amount of time out of it. It just took 2
Yeah.
seconds to warp.
Yeah.
And
Big Goron Sword
yeah,
was
that
a lot
was
of fun.
badass. The freaking Gerudo village whole thing, the Gerudo, whatever that thing
Fortress.
is, just going through and sneaking around there was the fortress. That was super fun. But yeah, I have many. But go ahead, Jason.
I think one that I love, like on the same vein of Ocarina of Time, was the moment that you go to Hyrule Castle and sneak in through the garden. I think that moment is just so cool because you get the change in gameplay because it's like this weird sneaking challenge now, like a stealth game. But then, like the most impressionable part of it for me is the music change, just because it's so stark of a change compared to a lot of the other music that you had experienced or heard within the game. And so now you have this like weird kind of quirky, like doo-doo, like weird music that I love that part. And then of course it's like you get to finally meet Zelda. There's the cool Easter eggs of like the pictures of Bowser and Mario and Peach in the windows. So like it's a really impactful, cool moment already, but like the music and then just the change in gameplay was so cool.
And part with that, the music was great and memorable because the music within Zelda games, and especially for me, Ocarina of Time, so that is probably the best, if not one of the best game soundtracks of all time. But that music was so cool, and then like you said, the gameplay, but even the camera angles,
Yeah.
because the rest of the game is kind of third person over the shoulder ish, and you have your first person looking, but that it goes above like it was a really cool aspect. And then that moment when you're looking through the window and Ganon looks at you, I remember being like 8 years old and be like, like he fucking saw us, because you feel exactly what they feel within the game.
Yeah.
It was such a great moment.
Because it's not like sneaking through the guards and stuff was like horrifying. It was kind of a little jaunt, and you're like, this is kind of fun. You have the light music and then the contrast of that.
Yeah, it was
music
very playful, and then it hits you because it has that music from the vision from the beginning of the game. Burna, manana, burna, and then look at Ganon. Like,
from the front of the
a great
castle when the
moment.
freaking everything starts
Yeah.
raining and
then because it's this vision, and then when it's like when she throws you the ocarina, because it comes full circle after you, right before you become, Big Link. Great
and
moment.
you meet Sheikah.
Yeah.
What's her name?
Sheik.
Sheik.
Oh no, Impa.
Impa.
Oh, Impa, yeah.
Yeah, because Impa's the little lady.
Because Zelda's Sheik. Yeah, but she's the little one in Breath of the Wild, which is cool because it's one of those continual things throughout it. With Ocarina of Time, one of my favorite parts was the Song of Storms paradox. Because I fucking love the Song of Storms. I think it's one of the greatest, like, catchiest pieces of music like ever written. I did my final project for my guitar degree. It was a Zelda medley, and we did Gerudo Valley, Song of Storms, and the overworld theme from Link to the Past. But just that moment that you finally learn the song, because it's that traveling through time, is that you play the song you learn it as an adult from the guy in the windmill with the crank who becomes the mask salesman in was it the same guy?
I think so. Or if not, it's the same character model, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they look very similar, but he's got the little box, but you technically teach it to him as a child Link, and it's this cool paradox that people talk about, is that it's this weird thing that's like because you're messing with times, that you teach it to him, but he teaches it to you. I always thought that was super cool, and then he gets angry and plays it all fast, and he gets all pissed off, and it breaks away. Like, that was a really cool moment.
That was
for me,
badass,
especially for such a great piece of music. And then, like, also because for me, one of the greatest games of all time, like I said before, is Link to the Past, because I think Breath of the Wild, Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past are in an all-out brawl for the best game of all time, because they're so similar but different and great for all their own reasons. But I remember getting the Master Sword in Link to the Past, and it just being such a fulfilling, cool moment, and something for games at the time that was very kind of cinematic. because you had all the little woodland creatures running around, and you had the shadow effects, and you picked it. It was just such a touching, like, powerful moment for me being like 6-7 years old or whatever it was, maybe even not even that old, but I always enjoyed that moment, and that really sticks out for me within Zelda.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty badass. I know one of the things we already talked about with like kind of the people and like the NPCs, they actually like make you give a shit about them, and like you said, kind of give you these impactful emotional moments like Saria and like all these people that you kind of see throughout your journeys. You just give a shit about, and like it brings the world to life. And so like that's one of those things, like the music, the people, like the environment, like freaking just even like Epona. I freaking love Epona. Still have like I mean, I named my horse in freaking Red Dead Epona once. Like, it's just one of those things.
Every game.
Every game you name a horse, it's Epona. Every horse in Breath of the Wild, Epona. Like,
if I have a daughter, her name's Epona. Like, freaking, that's how it is.
And also the moment, one of being able to ride Epona in Ocarina of Time was a fucking game changer for video games in general. Like, that changed everything. Like, you don't have Red Dead in The Witcher and those kind of feelings, because when you ride a horse in that, you automatically think of Epona, at least for our generation. It's like, this is just an extension of Epona. But also when you beat Luigi, when you jump over the fucking, because it's not Luigi, but it's him and his brother who run Lon Lon is fucking Mario and Luigi. That's a cool Easter egg. They're based on him. But that moment when you jump over the fence and like, awesome, dude. Like, that was so cool.
Well, and it made it so much more impactful. Like, you're not just getting this random horse that you find, like, you're escaping with this horse. There's this whole cutscene that happens. Yeah, it's really good.
And the whole going back in time, because now the horse like trusts you and things like that. And then the controls of the horse. I mean, for doing like one of the first horses of, gaming history, like, it's a really good controllable thing. So
one analog stick.
Yeah, on a crappy analog stick that freaking drifts like crazy. And like when you're doing the damn target practice around the thing. I'm also so vague about what I'm saying. You know what I'm talking about?
It was something I wanted to touch on, though. But it's two parts of that. So what you talk about with how the mechanics for it were so perfect, and even on an N64, and everyone, like, there's so many different ways to hold an N64 controller, because I used to do it super weird. You've commented on it, Randy. Because I used to have, like, the one hand, like...
Me too.
Yeah, well, because I taught you.
Oh, yeah, probably. You taught me. It's so funny, because I brought my N64 to college, and then I was playing, and they were like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, I remember doing that in California in 2012. And people were like, what's going on? I'm like, well, because his controllers were like, I learned how to play it differently because I'm ridiculed. But so going back. So you mentioned how it's so perfect. But when I said something about like Red Dead and like The Witcher, horse mechanics haven't changed.
Nope.
Zelda did it first and fucking nailed it. Perfect, 100%. You can't change it. Like, that's how horses work in video games. Epona is the shit. Even when you think about calling Epona in other games, like they have a little button now that you just call it, but you played the song like that. They nailed horses, 100%. And then what you said about the firing range, like, that was such a cool thing because there hadn't been anything really before in a game like that, when you have those different changes of perspective from first person, third person while you're on a horse, because there's rail shooters and shit. But like, I remember spending time and doing the course in the Gerudo Fortress, because you're like, I'm gonna nail this. I want that piece of heart. I want that quiver. Like, it was such a cool thing too, because like you said, just the Gerudo Valley in general, because the Gerudo Valley theme is another one of my favorite themes of all time. That song is so, because that was my part, like I said in the final, is that I got to play the solo lead part from Gerudo Valley, and I'm like, that is so rewarding to me. Like, I want to do it again for this channel, but it's just really cool. And like with the music, I'll say this one more thing and I'll let you kind of talk about it. And then, or wait, hold on. You also talked about people. I know, I got so many things to say, man. I'm good at talking. Like we were talking about Majora's Mask and how we were talking about the characters, and you said how they really fleshed out the world. Another one of my favorite parts about Majora's Mask, other than just doing all the masks and meeting all the people, was the fierce deity mask, which you needed to get through the game. Like, you had to meet everyone, you had to get all the masks to become this uber god fucking badass Link. You have face paint, you're a fucking giant, you got the helix sword. Dude, you're Super Link. That's
Isn't that
dope.
when you faced yourself? Like, there's the guy there's a Link that's in the reflections of the water. Isn't that in Majora?
No, that's in
that's Ocarina.
Holy crap! I can't believe I forgot that.
It's what temple is that?
I think that's a Forest Temple, isn't it?
That's what I was gonna
Light.
say. I thought it was the Forest Temple because you walk into that random ass room and then all
And
of
it's
a
just
sudden
that
it's
big
like,
lake.
Yeah.
The reflective lake.
Yeah, a little
'Cause
bit
then
of
I think
water.
you do it, yeah, because then I think you do it again in Ganon's castle.
Okay, maybe, yeah.
But
Fierce Deity is not the same.
no, because Fierce Deity is what you used
I remember, but Force
to fight Majora. Because it's a similar, though, in a sense, because it might have screwed you up, because when you go to fight the final boss with Majora, it's just that, like, dream world where it's the one tree on a hill. And that's where you get the Fierce Deity mask. And you learn about one Fierce Deity, but also how Majora completely corrupted Skull Kid. And it becomes this thing because you become Fierce Deity, and you're kind of like a war god in a sense, is that you're not necessarily good, but you're fighting evil, but you're a power that can destroy everything, but you're making the conscious decision to not destroy everything and actually save the world.
Yeah,
So
dude.
I mean, I thought that was fucking cool, because it's that layers of gameplay, is that it's a cool mechanic, it's a super cool character, but you don't get to experience it unless you go through the game and you meet all these people and you've learned their stories.
Yeah, because I think I was there when you beat it. You got the Fierce Deity the first time, and
Probably.
because I pretty much watched you play that game, and that's why I feel like I think I've beat it twice. But it's just like, oh yeah, I freaking already know this. But how deep those games are insane for its time. And going back to, I know we're jumping around, but like the freaking mini games that you find, even in going back to the old games, they always had something like a claw game, and they didn't just make it freaking easy. You know, you had to practice, which is one of the coolest things. I don't know, I'm all about the details. I like finding cool shit and like just doing all the collectibles and things like that. So big one on my list.
And I mean, for a game we didn't talk about a lot, Wind Waker had such that great one. Kaboom! Sploosh!
Battleships
Great
with
side
the
character.
squids or the whatever. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. Great side game, but even better character. Because other than, like, if you don't sit there and you don't go to play that game, you never meet that guy. And he's so disinterested and doesn't want to talk to you. But then his sound effects for that game are one of the more memorable parts of Wind Waker. And Wind Waker
And
was
then
an
he
amazing
pulls
game.
up the things, the different
Yeah.
things that make him have a different scene, right? Like he's playing this character, but like when you come up to him, you're right. He's so disinterested. He doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't want to
Yeah.
be there. He hates his job. But then he's there. He's the character.
Good guy,
Like,
bro.
it's awesome.
Great. It's so great. But you have to invest yourself in the game to do it. It's so good.
Yeah, one of my, I think, like, just because on the Wind Waker vein, like, I think I was, I mean, too young to, not too young, but, like, I just didn't focus very well on Wind Waker. So, like, one of the most impressionable moments for me is Dragon Roost Island, because that music is so, I mean, music in Zelda is perfect. Like, the fucking title music for Wind Waker, I absolutely love. I fucking love that song. But like Dragon Roost Island is so good, and then just like the epicness of like everything shaking and the dragon being on top of the volcano, it just was all so great. And so that's like such an impressionable memory, because I played it. I probably played that specific island over 100 times because I constantly restarted the game. But like it's such a fond memory for me.
Yeah, and the discovery aspect of Wind Waker was so good. Like, I spent a ton of time on Wind Waker. A lot of people had their gripes about Wind Waker. graphics and all the bullshit, and everyone copied it afterwards. I'm not gonna go on the rant this time, but fuck you. Wind Waker was awesome, and all y'all hated it for no reason. But I got all the map. I found every fucking treasure, and I loved it. I fucking loved it. I'm willing to do it again if they release it on the Switch, because I almost did it again with Ezra, my nephew. He was playing it on the Wii U, and I got into the game again with him because he asked me to help him on one section in a dungeon, and I had no idea because I hadn't played it in a decade. But then I was like, no, I want to fucking play this game. Like,
yeah, dude, all Zelda games are like Shawshank Redemption. If you start even a second of these games or that movie, you have to watch the whole damn thing. And so, like, even like Weston, or my son, I haven't played Breath of the Wild in freaking months, and he's like, hey, can you like do this thing for me? Get on it. Like freaking 2 hours later, I'm just like just walking around taking pictures, like doing whatever. And that's one of those games that's badass about that world is I can literally just freaking explore and do nothing for an hour.
Yeah,
which is pretty badass.
My final moment before we kind of wrap this up.
Yes.
I mean, because like I said, we could talk about this for hours on end, but I have to put my son to sleep. In a good way, not the animal way. Isn't that
he fucking interrupted my Zelda talk? Time to put him to sleep.
Sleeper hole.
3 years too long. But no, it just reminded me of Randy from back in the day. Just normal.
Yeah. Normal. Don't want to tell their
about
kids what that was all about, but
you'll find out one day, kids. In Ocarina of Time, when you play him Saria's song, because it's incorporated the music, because like I said, the music, Koji Kondo, you are a fucking genius. Like, you were up there with John Williams as far as scores and themes, and if anyone says otherwise, I will bitch slap them for you. But so other than just the great music, the reaction in the movie, like the quick time event that happens or whatever you want to call it, was so memorable. You play it and he's just like, the camera angles, and then he just starts dancing, and like, it was such a cool moment. And then you became brothers through music. And it was such an awesome moment.
Well, it's such a perfect contrast because Darunia at that point is so like, yes, he's the big stoic manly guy, and then you play the song and he just becomes this like joyful, like jovial kid. So it is such an impactful, great moment.
Yeah, that's pretty badass. That when Weston did that like not too long ago, he was laughing out loud, and I was like, yeah, you did that part because it's so funny. You're like, what the heck just happened? This guy just totally will.
One final moment for just like giving Twilight Princess. We didn't show enough love to Twilight Princess. The last temple before like the end. So I don't know what temple it was, but you're up in the air. And you fight the dragon with the double hook shot that you just got.
Yeah.
It's such a fucking epic boss battle because like you make your way up and you finally get to it, and then it starts raining, and then you have to start double hook shotting, and you're fighting a fucking dragon while constantly in the air. It's such a good boss fight. And I think like Twilight Princess is a very good game and often compared to Ocarina of Time, as it should be, but there are some really great moments, and I just love that boss fight.
Yeah. And I feel bad that we didn't talk about Twilight Princess, because Twilight Princess was a great game, and it's a game that I still really want to play. I never actually got to actually finish the game, because Jason remembers. So I moved to California, and then I came back for Christmas, and I beat Link to the Past, but then I also wanted to set out and beat Twilight Princess. So I get 3/4 of the way through the game, and my nephew Ezra, who's 5 at the time, fucking deletes my play.
That always happens.
So I'm balls deep into the game. So I start it again, and I get outside of Ganon's castle, and there's the cutscene with Mina, and you're like, oh yeah, we're gonna beat Ganon. and it fucking freezes. So I have never actually finished Twilight Princess because the game was scratched. And I had already beaten the game twice, basically up to that point. I was like, man, now I have to go buy this game again, and then I have to play it again. So that's another reason why I want Twilight Princess HD, is because I actually want to fight Ganon.
Yeah,
I was pissed.
It's a good boss fight too.
Yeah,
like Tucket Zelda and Ganon in that game.
Oh shit!
Because I think I actually beat the game again to just see if it was like a weird part of a save file. So I think I've beaten that game 3 times without finishing it.
Yeah, I got about halfway through it, and that's another one that has kind of like a duality because of the whole, wolf thing.
I have the cool amiibo.
Yeah, and it's probably one of like the coolest looking. Let me see. Sorry, I totally missed that. What?
Isn't that cool?
That's badass.
See, and her, when you do the Guardian helmet in Breath of the Wild, because it's based on her helmet, I wear that all the time. It's great. We can keep going and going and going.
It's like, and scene. Just kidding.
Yeah.
No, it is Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, in the end, we all love Zelda. Nintendo, please take our money and give us what we want, because we want it, and we're gonna drag it out. And we love Zelda so much, and it's been, like I said, we've already talked for almost 2 hours about Zelda, and we could talk for another 4 or 5. But it's been a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I like, because we're actually gonna wrap it up. I have been John from Is It Dead Yet, and we've got Randy from Is It Dead Yet, and you can catch us on here on YouTube if you search Is It Dead Yet 0. You can catch us on Twitch at twitch.tv/Is It Dead Yet 0. And we've been playing Resident Evil games, and we're gonna be playing more Resident Evil games. And because we're doing this, I'm gonna be playing some fucking Zelda games too. And then you can also catch us on Instagram at Is It Dead Yet 0. You can see the theme, and our website is www.isitdeadyet.net. And then also thank you, Jason, for coming to hang out. You can plug your stuff as well.
Yeah, so if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Yesone. And then I stream sometimes on my own Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Yesone. Not as much because I have internet issues. But I do stream on my friend Matt's channel, which is twitch.tv/TrouserDropper. So if you want to come watch some Dead by Daylight, we've been getting into VR, so a lot of Beat Saber, and then like first-person shooters. Come check us out. It's real fun.
Nice.
Every time you say trouser dropper, I just think of fucking Jay and Silent Bob. What's a trouser snake? Now, like, he's got to make that one of his emotes or whatever on his channel, and I have to get paid for it now.
Yeah.
I'm making that happen. It's on film.
Yeah, I put things in my brown eye and no shit stains in my undies.
Yeah. Don't ask. See, now we're gonna have to do a Kevin Smith podcast because me and Randy just fucking love Kevin Smith.
Yeah, I don't have any freaking. I'll have balls to ask him straight up. You need to be on a freaking podcast. Sniggins.
Just imagine if we got Kevin Smith between Star Wars, Marvel, and just View Askew. You're talking like 3.5 days of just constant like.
And then get Joe Rogan, do some DMT, and then we're really into it. Then we like don't know where our kids are. Like,
yeah. So, and of course, we didn't mention earlier, but these are going to be called "Are They Done Yet?" and "Are We Done Yet?" Are we?
We're just gonna let this fucking drop right here.
See, and this is where another favorite moment: the moon.
The
moon from Majora's just crashes us.
That's a nice little outro. Yeah, we'll do that.